How can the Green Bay Packers spring the upset against the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving Day? Matt Dery from Locked On Lions joins us to break it all down. The biggest stories, the matchups, final predictions, all of it on a early crossover Thursday. It is a special edition of Locked On Packers on a Wednesday. Let's go.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live, we're going to be live after the game on Thursday. For those Locked On Packers listeners who are part of the number one Packers podcast on the internet and the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. A crossover Thursday. Matt Dery from Locked On Lions. It's Thanksgiving Day. The Packers are more than a touchdown underdogs. This is unfamiliar territory. It's usually the other way around, roles reversed. So we're going to have a blast with our guy, Matt Dery. Let's go.
It's your special edition of the Thursday crossover on a Wednesday. Matt Dery, Locked On Lions, Peter Bukowski, Locked On Packers, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team indeed every day. As we preview Thanksgiving Day, the big matchup at Ford Field, 8-2 Detroit, 4-6 Green Bay, and what should be now a fun and interesting game as the Packers have played better the last 3 weeks. This crossover Thursday episode on a Wednesday is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It is. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Pete, great to see you, brother. Here we go. Second time we've talked this year, and it's kind of a weird spot for both these teams, but here we are.
Yeah, this is not the place that I think the Packers thought that they would be in. And I think if you gave most Lions fans truth serum, they would not have said, hey, yeah, 8-2 potential number one seed in the NFC was at play here, not with the 49ers, not with the Eagles, potentially able to, even the Cowboys. And yet that's where the Lions are, unfamiliar territory. This is a role reversal in a lot of ways. And I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now, Matt, like the Packers are now in the position that the Lions found themselves in so many times. I said, there's not a game left on the schedule the Packers cannot win. And people said, what about the Lions game? And I go, how many times did the Packers have a team that looked so much better than Detroit's, and yet they went to Detroit, or even at home? What was that 2015 season where, you lose on the last second field goal? How many times in these division games have we just seen weird stuff happen? And so if you're the Packers, that's sort of where you are. It's time to play spoiler, time to be that plucky, pesky upstart. That's what they're doing here down the stretch, because they have, Matt, an outside chance to sneak into the postseason still.
Sure. I mean, it's like I said, it played better. Jordan Love had his best game last Sunday. We're going to get into all that. We appreciate you making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe if you're a Packer fan. Locked On Packers on YouTube. Same with the Lions on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. Top storyline. Let's start with you, Pete. I mean, here in Detroit, everybody's just thrilled that they escaped with Chicago. But what about Green Bay? Is it Love and what he did this past week?
Yeah, it has to be, because that is the most important thing for this team for the next 5 years. Is where is Jordan Love in his development? Is he the guy? It is the most momentous decision that this team has to make this offseason. And in a lot of ways, it is in tandem, right, with the decision that they made last offseason. You trade away Aaron Rodgers to play Jordan Love. Now, Aaron Rodgers didn't want to be there anymore. We don't have to relitigate that. I don't really have any interest in relitigating that.
Yes, you do.
We've certainly litigating it enough on our show. But I know you would just like to sit here and let me talk about Aaron Rodgers and that disaster all day. But the Love development, especially the last month, he has looked so comfortable. It has been in tandem with the rise in the consistency of their young players, guys like Jaden Reed, who I'm sure a lot of people in your audience are hyper familiar with, Michigan State standout. And I just want to say one thing off the top on Jaden Reed. I was not a huge fan of his pre-draft, liked, not loved, But Jaden Reed, the person, I am blown away by. And the maturity that he has shown, the resiliency after they lost in Pittsburgh, the receivers were around his locker talking about adjustments that they want to make, that they need to make. He's been the guy saying all the right things in the locker room. And it's not a surprise to me at this point now, when he has a game like he did on Sunday against the Chargers, where he was their number one receiver. He was their number one playmaker. They're drawing up stuff for him. He's making every big catch and creating explosives for them. This offense looks night and day different from what we saw at the beginning of the season. And I said this on my show yesterday, Matt. I think the plan is going to be to attack this Lions team the exact same way that they did the first time around. They're just better equipped to do it this time. I think they're going to try and sling it all around the yard. And this Lions defense, not quite playing at the same level that it was earlier in the season. Happy to beat the Bears, I suppose, but a little bit of concern in what's going on the last month with this Lions team.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, as I like to call him, future head coach Aaron Glenn, during games, if you go on the Twitter machine, I mean, it's brutal. And when Justin Fields is doing whatever he wants on the ground, Bear receivers are getting behind Lions, corners and safeties. It's not a good scene. And you're right. They couldn't stop Herbert, and you got to see him firsthand last week. Chargers scored on 5 straight possessions to end that game, all touchdowns. This week, the Lions find themselves in the fourth quarter down 26-14 to, Chef Poles and Matt Eberflus and the Bear. I mean, come on. You can't lose to this team now.
Yeah.
Lions didn't lose.
You forgot Bustin' Fields.
That's right. I mean, Hall of Fields, as I call him, actually looked pretty good. That game wasn't on him.
No,
that poor kid, Scott, the wide receiver, makes that catch at the end of the game. It's over. But there's some concern about the defense.
Did have the big fumble. I have to get that up.
Yeah. But like the every edge rusher on this roster, not named Aiden Hutchinson, is not getting home. When they do sack the quarterback, it's either Anzalone on a blitz, Hutchinson, or McNeil. It's nobody else, and that's a problem. And so while all that's being said, you still have to take a step back and go, they know how to win. They do win every week, it seems like, no matter if it's a 3-point win over the Chargers, whether it's a 5-point win over the Bears, they win. So 8-2, they're in good shape. And but yes, I would say the storyline is, all right.
Matt, are you telling me that John Kaminsky has not continued to look like Aaron Donald after he sunned the Packers on Thursday night? What the hell? Like, my God.
He does love playing against the Packers under the lights. This will be a day game, so maybe it won't be the Commish's big day like it's been the last 2 times against Green Bay. But and look, the bottom line, I mean, Jared Goff had his worst game and they still won. So yeah. I think Lion fans feel like, all right, Thanksgiving Day at home, place will be loud. They'll bounce back and play better and win. But like you said, it seems like the Packers are in a nice rhythm right now.
This is understanding, Aaron Rodgers, it feels different. And I think you and I talked about a little bit of a passing of the torch in week 18 last year, where it felt like, okay, this is not the Packers division anymore. Those are the games that Aaron Rodgers used to just own. The Packers used to just own against Detroit. But I do think for the Packers, this is a little bit of a prove it week. Like, okay, you can beat the Rams with, a Foot Locker manager playing quarterback. Like, that's cool. You can beat the Chargers, who can't stop a nosebleed. That's cool. Can you actually play with some of the best teams in the NFC? Not that I'm into moral victories by any means. Although as a Syracuse football fan, sometimes you have to be. But
nice athletic director we have. Oh my God.
sorry to see Dino Babers go. Love Dino Babers. But this Packers team has an opportunity here to say, no, look, we're making real progress here and play with this team, try and upset this team. And this is, I think, the next big litmus test for Jordan Love, this offense, and this young team. I've been calling them the Brat Pack because it's all first and second year players, especially on offense. And so I want to see him again in a big game. You've made your progress. Okay, now prove it against a quality opponent.
Pete and I are going to come back coming up next and talk some matchups. We will do that right here on Locked On Lions and Locked On Packers. The Thursday game, we're, of course, as I said before, brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. We got to talk about Prize Picks for a second, because when you talk about Prize Picks, you're talking about the most fun you can play daily fantasy each and every day. And here's what's great about Prize Picks. You're not going up against other people. It's just you against projections. You pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. Take $10 and turn it into $250 with some ease. What about last night? If you had Travis Kelce under like 50 yards or 60 yards on Monday Night Football, you were a winner. He did not have a big game at all. Let's talk about this game coming up. Jahmyr Gibbs, 65 yards on the ground, more than, less than, put some money down, whatever you think it is at Prize Picks. Daily fantasy sports made easy and so much fun. You go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy with our friends at Prize Picks. Peter Bukowski back with us. Matt Dery with you. Locked On Lions, Locked On Packers, the Thursday crossover on a Wednesday as we have Thanksgiving Day football. Lions and Packers from Ford Field. What was it, many years ago, Pete? Vince Lombardi said we don't want to play in that game and protested it for years. He thought the Packers should not have to play on Thursdays, but here we are. These two teams are going at it on Thanksgiving Day. You excited?
Yeah, Vince Lombardi not walking through that door here. So
No, he isn't. All right. Matchup wise, I'll go first. I want to watch Jordan Love run. Week 4, it was like when he had lanes to go, it's almost like, somebody was in his head, whether it was LaFleur or whomever, saying, throw the ball, 3-step drop and shoot it out there. The last few weeks, man, the Lions have not been able to get a quarterback down. 2 sacks against Fields, no sacks against Herbert. Both obviously can move. They got blown out by the Ravens. Lamar Jackson did his thing. They gave up 37 points to Geno and Seattle. Smith did his thing. We're not saying here that Jordan Love is Michael Vick or Steve Young or anybody like that, but I want to see if the Packers do watch some of that tape and see. I'm not saying they're going to call design backyard football, peewee football runs like the Getsy did for Fields, but will Love move a little bit more in the pocket? The Lions have not been able to stop a mobile quarterback. What are your thoughts?
This has been a part of the offense over the course of the season. They've used him a lot on designed rollouts. They've had some designed runs for him. They love in the red zone. I mean, this is something for your listeners, especially, to look out for in the low red zone in particular. They will spread you out and go quarterback draw. And it has worked pretty effectively. They did it in the red zone last week against the Chargers. It didn't work quite so well, but Jordan Love has 2 touchdowns on those kinds of plays. And so that's something that I think is definitely going to be on the menu. If Aaron Jones were playing, I would say you might get some more opportunity for some zone read kind of looks, especially after the success that we saw with some of the designed runs from the Bears last week. That's just not really where AJ Dillon is built to play. I guess if you want to go, maybe we'll see more of those sort of RPO looks from the gun, where you're either going to give to AJ Dillon on the inside zone, or throw it out to, say, Jaden Reed on those receiver screens. That's a concept they love to go back to. But Love will, especially in the second halves, take off and rip these runs off. I mean, he's ripped off, I think he has 3 30+ yard runs this season.
Wow.
And against the Saints, it set up the game-winning score. He certainly has the ability to escape and use his legs. That's a big piece of, as an athletic quarterback, what he can do. There are also times, Matt, where he trusts his athleticism a bit too much, and doesn't play with the urgency escaping outside the pocket that maybe he should. The feel on some of those escape plays are not quite there. I'm really interested in some of these matchups with the secondary receivers. I know we've talked about the corners and some of the revamped nature of this secondary, but I was going through some of the numbers earlier, and against wide receiver 2s, this is the second worst defense in the league by DVOA, covering wide receiver 2s. So against wide receiver 1s, top 10 defense. Against tight ends and running backs, top 10 defense, but it's that second receiver. Maybe it's an allocation of resources. I don't know if it's a left side, right side thing. I would have to really, dial into whatever the charting is that says number 2 receiver. The Packers don't really have a number 1 receiver. That's the funny thing about this. They have 3 number 2 receivers.
Yeah.
But so the Packers do like to run, to me, what that is saying is the concept side of the formation is where you can attack. So you want to single up a backside receiver one-on-one? No, they're going to be able to handle that stuff. And we saw that, I think, in the first game where Jordan Love wanted to look backside. You'd have 2 or 3 receivers to one side on the concept side. Love would try and throw backside. That was how he threw the interception. Alex Anzalone gets his hands on the pass to Christian Watson, and it turns into a turnover. The Packers have done a really good job the last month of making teams communicate and of attacking where you want to be. The game plans have been superb, understanding this is how this defense can be attacked and exploiting leverage, exploiting defense rules, all that stuff. This is a defense the Packers know, they've seen, and if they can protect, that's the key, because they couldn't protect anybody last time. It was meat at the quarterback for the Lions first time around. Zach Tom was playing on one leg. John Runyon Jr. got hurt in that game. And then you had, I think, Rasheed Walker making his second NFL start, I think, in that game. And so you go, well, it looks much better this time around. They protected pretty well against the Chargers against Khalil Mack, and they didn't allow Khalil Mack to wreck the game. I think it's going to be the same sort of game plan. Give Jordan Love some time. And over the last, I think since week 8, this is the second worst passing defense in the league. The Lions are by EPA per play and success rate. So they've allowed part of that gets blown out when you get beat up by Justin Herbert and Lamar Jackson. In between, they played okay, but those 2 games count, right? You have to count the Ravens game and the Chargers game. And so I think the Packers are gonna find some ways to exploit that secondary, especially against those secondary sorts of receivers. That's where Jaden Reed in the slot can be a killer. Jaden Reed versus Brian Branch, baby. Like, let's do this rookie versus rookie. I think right now that's good on good. And that's going to be the thing that I'm going to be watching a lot in this game. Can the Packers find ways to free up Jaden Reed, or does Brian Branch put the clamps on him? I think that's going to be a huge storyline in this game.
Yeah, Brian Branch has been great. And really, this game this past week against the Bears was kind of like the Brian Branch of September that we saw. He got hurt.
Yeah.
Hasn't really been the same since, but boy, he really played well this week. He's very, very good. The guy that they seemingly pick on when he's out there, and he only played 1 defensive snap this week, was Will Harris. So if he's out there, look out. They'll go right at him. Jerry Jacobs hasn't been bad. It's just, they've just not been able to get home. That's the bottom line. You can sit here and pick on the secondary. I mean, I'm a Cam Sutton fan. I think he's been good. Had a really bad game 2 weeks ago, but they couldn't touch Herbert. So of course he's just pitching and catching with Keenan Allen. Fields to DJ Moore.
Do that to everybody.
Right. Fields to DJ Moore on that touchdown. I mean, Justin had all day to throw. And so now, somebody off the other edge, whether it's Pascal, whether it's Kaminsky, whether it's the 2 Juarez, somebody get home one time. Charles Harris, same thing. Like, it has to be Hutchinson. And that poor guy made the play of the game to end the game the other day with the safety, but he can't do it on every play. And the other thing just to watch in this game too, when we talk about matchups, is the Lions really pounded the Packers in the second half on the ground with David Montgomery in that game.
Yep.
And they'll probably want to do it again. In front of it, everybody will be watching national TV. The only game going on. Dan Campbell wants to show everybody, hey, we still got David Montgomery now. We got Gibbs healthy, and we can pound you on the run. So has the Packers' run defense been better since week 4 in your mind?
No, it's so bad. And the gap integrity still stinks. They're still doing, I mean, we are still talking on our show, Matt, about how there were times in that game. I mean, week 4 was when we first started to flag it, where the Lions came out heavy personnel, low red zone. The Packers came out in nickel, and the Lions went right to the line of scrimmage inside the low red zone and said, we're going to run it. This was clearly part of the game plan. Ben Johnson said, we know if we catch them in nickel in the red zone and we pick up a nice little chunk, we're going low red zone and we're going to run it right at them, because we know they can't hold up. And that's true. The problem is we've seen the Packers in situations where they have the opportunity to substitute in the low red zone, still play nickel, and they're just getting manhandled at the point of attack. And so that is something that obviously cannot happen again. I think what the Packers are going to have to hope for is you get turnover Goff, you get that guy again. And so you have to throw it. And then you have an offense that's good enough. I mean, what I was used to say in the Aaron Rodgers era was their best run defense was Aaron Rodgers, because if you think Aaron Rodgers is going to score 30, it makes it hard to stay committed to the run game. If you think the other team is going to score every time they touch the ball, you have to stay patient. And all it takes is one negative run and it's 2nd and long, or one holding call, and now it's 1st and 20. And now it's like, okay, can we stay on script? That's for the Packers. They have to be able to create enough offense to make the Lions think twice, to make Jared Goff press. And, Jared Goff in his career against Green Bay as a Detroit Lions quarterback has not been particularly impressive in terms of taking care of the ball. If you look at the stat lines, none of them are particularly impressive. They got Russell Douglas for the double move touchdown. We'll see if Jair Alexander is able to go in this game. The Packers injury report, I mean, our friend Aaron Alice, who does stuff over at Acme Packing Company and other places, she joked that the Packers injury report looks like a CVS receipt right now. I think there's 16 players on the injury report. I don't even know who's going to go, Matt. So we'll see. That makes it hard to do some of this projection stuff, because it's like, okay, is it going to be Carrington Valentine against Amon-Ra St. Brown, or is it going to be Jair Alexander? Because those are horses of very different colors.
Yeah. Oh, no question about it. You're right. That injury report has been heavy, especially, and your tight end is hurt. So we'll see what goes on. All right. How do the Packers win this game? How do the Lions win this game? We will talk about that with Peter Bukowski coming up next. So let's tell you about Game Time. Yes, best app to get tickets is the Game Time app. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You want sports, music, comedy, theater events near you, Game Time is the best. My favorite part is simple as that view from your seat in the venue. It really makes Game Time so much better than all of the other apps. See that view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly where you are going to sit. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Simple. Terms apply. Again, create the account, redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Peter Bukowski, Locked On Packers. Matt Dery, Locked On Lions. Thursday's game, 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central for the Lions and Packers on Thanksgiving Day. Detroit going for the season series sweep for the second consecutive year here, Pete. How do the Packers win this game? How do you see Green Bay springing an upset here?
The offense scores in the red zone. So I wrote about this yesterday for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to, that the Lions, for as effective as they have been moving the ball this season, I think they're second in yards per game, just raw yardage. They are bottom 5 on both sides of the ball in the red zone. Now, red zone stats can be a little bit of small sample size theater. They don't always mean everything. They're not necessarily predictive, but situational football is ultimately what decides these games. If you can't score touchdowns in the red area, it becomes really difficult to score, because it means you have to create explosive plays on a regular basis. The Packers, the last month, Matt, now be careful. If you've just eaten, just be very careful. 4 of 16 scoring touchdowns the Packers have been on offense in the red zone. That is an atrocity. And this is over the last 3 weeks. They've, I think, 391, 399, and 397 total yardage. So we're talking about really, really good offense, but failures in the red zone. If you can let the Lions do what the Lions do in the red zone and settle for field goals more often than the quality of their offense says they should, right? Make it so that they're scoring 24 instead of 35. That gives you a chance. And then the other side of that is you have to score your touchdowns. And normally I would say, well, they're not good in the red zone. They're not. Bottom 5, also a bottom 5 offense. They are a better situational defense in this case than the Lions in the red zone. But I think if you just sort of extrapolate the growth offensively, you can say, okay, in the red zone where things get tighter, where things get a little more difficult, you have to be able to execute. That's the next piece of growth. If they can make it this week, and all of a sudden now they can score, they get 4 red zone opportunities, they come away with 4 touchdowns, or they come away with 3 touchdowns and a field goal. Now you have a chance to win this game. That would be the way that I would look at it. I guess the plan for the Lions is to just dominate the line of scrimmage. To me, is it any more simple than that? That's what happened last time. I don't know why you wouldn't just run it back.
It's funny. You mentioned red zone coming out of the bye. The Lions said our red zone offense, it was 3 or 4 weeks, was not good. Settling for field goals. It was the Riley Patterson show. And then against the Chargers, they scored nothing but touchdowns. They did great. And then this past week, when they got in the red zone against the Bears, they were fine. Goff to St. Brown, Gibbs touchdown, obviously the Montgomery touchdown that won it. So they scored touchdowns. To me, you're right. The Lions, I think, if they are going to win this game, it's going to be how they won it in week 4. I mean, you've been lathering in that Jordan Love butter for a little bit. You should. He's playing well. But you know what? If he's not on the field, he can't score. So if the Lions just batter the Packers like they did in week 4, Montgomery, Gibbs, Reynolds when he's out there, and really kind of, take it to this Packer team and keep Love off the field, that's how I think the Lions win this game. I think that's, like I said, they want to go back to playing the way that they have. Now, there have been some games, including the Charger game, they got into a shootout, they had to throw. Bears game, you're down 12, you got to throw. But still, sprinkling in some of those runs, which is what the Lions did, is what I think they're going to be doing this Sunday. I think that's
here's one thing I'd like to see the Packers do. I want them to just empty the clip. Like, they've got specials. I want to see them play the way that the Lions played in week 17 2 years ago, where it's like, it doesn't matter. The Packers are playing their backups. We're throwing 2 trick plays at you. We're going double pass. And remember, they worked. And that was the game Jordan Love played the final week of the season. And so the Packers, I think, have an opportunity to be really aggressive. And that is where I would like to see them just say, okay, we've been saving this little group, this little pod of plays. We've got this kind of trick play here. We've got this special here. This play comes off this play. Let's just run all of them. Let's run the throwback screens, the flea flickers. I want to see all that stuff, because who cares if it doesn't work? You're probably going to lose. So I want to see them play like the desperate upstart team, to play the way the Lions would play in a game like this. And ironically, that's, I think, the best way to get a win in this game, is to just say, let's just let it hang out. Let's call everything. Let's kitchen sink. We're going to throw everything, the kitchen sink and anything in the fridge. Let's throw that in there too. And just see what you got, because I think that would make this game fun. I think we're going to get a fun game, Matt. I think this is going to be a really competitive game. I think the Packers come in as confident as they have been all season. I think the Lions win, but I certainly see a world in which the Packers win. I said the same thing about the Pittsburgh game, which very much could have been what happened. I said the same thing about the Chargers game, and look what happened. The Packers won that one as well. I think this is like 28-24. Packers lose, but cover would be where I go on this. But I also could see a week where everything comes together. The offense hums the way that we've seen it, and they put up 400 yards of offense, and they finally pay that yardage off with touchdowns. Now, who knows? Maybe they lose 31-28 or 35-28, or, the Chargers game could have easily been 42-20 if the Chargers don't shoot themselves in the foot. But I think this is going to be a close, competitive game, division rivalry, and a game worthy of our Thanksgiving Day, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, everybody used to complain about the Lions playing on Thanksgiving. Can we get somebody else? Give me a break.
Now it's going to be great. David Blau is not in the building, Matt, to be fair.
That is true. I like the Lions too. I'm with you. I think this could be a win, not cover situation, 34-31, 24-20. To be honest, Jordan Love looked really good this past week, first 300-yard game, and now they're excited about him. I think that he takes a little bit of a step back this week. I think the Lion defense is listening to what people are saying. I think they'll play better. But I think
future head coach Aaron Glenn.
Well, they're finding a way, despite Glenn, everything else that's going on. I do think the defense has been bad the last 2 weeks, but made the play when they had to at the end in this last game. And I think they'll carry a little bit of that momentum in there. And again, I think David Montgomery has a huge day. St. Brown loves Thanksgiving Day. And I think Sam Laporta could be a problem too for Green Bay. So I'll take the Lions again, but I do think, like you said, competitive game, Packers playing a little bit more juice and energy and confidence than they have. They did earlier in the year. I mean, what a mess, other than the Bears game September was. So I'm with you. I think I think it'll be fun, but I could see a 34-30, 27-21 type of a.
And no matter what happens, it's done early. You can go have your turkey day and enjoy it. I know I'm going to enjoy it. Best to you and your family, Matt. Happy Thanksgiving. Always love coming on these and doing them with you. So I'm glad we get to share the holiday this year. All right, thanks to Matt for joining the show. Awesome crossover edition. We will be live for our final show of the week after the game on Thursday. So go subscribe over on our YouTube page to go hang out with us there. And if you missed it, we have Lily Zhao earlier today. That show came out. That show should be in your feed. If you're not a subscriber, why not? Go change that. And we'll give you everything you need to get ready this week for Packers Lions. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. You know the deal, wherever you get podcasts. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live, like we will be after the game on Thursday, go subscribe over on our Locked On Packers YouTube page so you can stay Locked On Packers.